I guess I'm starting again. So I'm I'm just doing these videos for me, really. Our friends suggested it, but I just want to start sort of making some notes for myself around what it is I'm kind of exploring here. I want to write this book about our friends and their presence in my life and what they've meant and what they mean and my journey with them. And it's hard to get a handle on. I've been just working on it for years. I want to do it in a deep and genuine, authentic way, not a new age way. And I've been growing in that, and it's it's hard to when you're not following the normative path, so to speak. In any case, I started studying the course when I was working at the refugee center, and I was going to Unity Church and I don't know, I was 24 or 25, and I was at Unity one Sunday, and I was struggling with something, and I just felt that there was a book there for me. And I went through their bookstore and couldn't find one book by book. I knew it would. I knew intuitively it would jump out at me. And I also didn't have much money. I had like $12 in my checking account, and I went through the bookstore 2 or 3 times, and then I tried to leave, and I literally got stopped at the door. I had to turn around, go back, and I went through it again. I did this 3 times. And then I thought, this is ridiculous. It's not here. So I tried to walk out. I got outside the door that time, and I literally got stopped. Go back. It is there. And I said sort of inwardly, look, I've looked everywhere, and it's not there. And I was just going back into the doors, and this voice said, stop, look. And from a distance across the lobby, I looked. The bookstore was along the far wall of the lobby. I looked, and all of a sudden I realized that to the left of the bookstore was this whole little display of books. And they were Course in Miracles books, which I had looked at before, but I just didn't feel drawn to them. It wasn't my time. And I thought, really? And so I went over and I looked, and sure enough, this was the book I was supposed to have. It was very clear to my intuition and body, but it was like $30 or $32, and I thought, I don't have the money for this, and I don't have this much money in my checking account. And literally, the voice said, "Buy it. It will be fine. It's covered." And I could not put it down. It was just, And so I thought, well, you better cover this check because I can't afford to have it bounced. I got it. I paid for it. I wrote the check. To this day, I have no idea how that check cleared, but it cleared. The money was in my account. I refigured my checkbook. I still couldn't figure out where that money came from, but it was there, and it cleared. It didn't add up, but it happened. And I was... whatever I was going through, my boss actually gave me like 3 weeks off from work, and I literally stayed home. I lived on an inlet, and I slept when I needed to. I woke when I needed to. I ate when I needed to, and I read the Course in Miracles, and I devoured it. And then, and it was it was perfect for me. I started the lessons, but I didn't continue them at that point. And then I think it was a year or two later, I went through a course about the Course with a woman named Julianne Connell. And when that was going on, I had a couple of amazing experiences of not in the meetings themselves, but at home. Twice I woke up out of nowhere, no no struggle, just suddenly my eyes opened. And I think once was lit it at night still, and once was at around dawn. Both times I lay there, and initially with no words, but this incredible stillness and silence, but this fullness at the same time. And when finally, the first time, when finally my mind I was just sort of in awe at this place I found myself. And my mind asked, what is this? And then I knew this is peace, peace, with a big P, peace. And then another beat or two passed, and my brain clicked in, and that was the end. It was kind of gone because my brain clicked in with all its questions and comments and everything. And it happened again, and I knew immediately what it was, what was happening. And still, it didn't last very long because my brain started commenting. And then I had also started meditating. And what started happening when I was meditating was, this was about 1986 or 87. What started happening when I was meditating was, and I was aware of this, that I would be meditating and I would definitely feel this tremendous sense of love and more than light, more than what we think of as light, but this presence in the light, very loving, very nourishing. And my hands would start to move, and I was very aware, my eyes would be closed. I was very aware, though, that a lot of energy was being moved from and around and away from and into my body through these movements of my hands. And it all felt wonderful. And I was doing that every day. I don't remember for how long. This was 20, 40 years ago. 40, 30 years ago. Not that old. And then one day I had a cat, Annie, beautiful long-haired calico. And Annie was a hunter. I lived in the country, and I often kept my door open to let in the breezes in so Annie could go in and out when I was home. But I had a rule with Annie that she could not bring her mice and things into the house. She did not always obey this rule, surprisingly enough, being a cat. And one day I was meditating, my eyes were closed, my hands were moving, and I would often see things, from behind my lids, and, I just assumed these are just sort of, I don't know, visions, or it's what I'm seeing behind my lids. It's not, I'm not actually seeing, it's like imagining, or it's whatever the energies felt like. I thought those were what I was seeing. I wasn't literally seeing what was outside my eyelids. So this day I'm meditating and my hands are moving, my eyes are closed, and I see Annie come into the apartment, into my studio, carrying a mouse in her mouth. And I recognize that it looks like it looked when I closed my eyes. The door's open, the sun's shining, everything looks like it looked. And Annie walks in, and she's about 4 or 5 feet in front of me, and she lays down on the carpet, and she plays with this mouse until she finally kills it. And then she ate it on the carpet in front of me. And I had the thought, as I didn't open my eyes, but as my hands are moving in meditation community, I had the thought, of this had better not be happening, Annie. You better not be eating a mouse, And then I thought, of course it's not happening, my eyes are closed. It's not how it's happening. So I went on with my meditation. I didn't think anything more about it, Annie. And Annie finished her mouse, left her little bits and pieces she always left. and she just lay there. So my meditation finished, and I opened my eyes. And there sat Annie with the remnants of the mouse 4 or 5 feet in front of me, exactly where and as I had seen her, with my eyes closed. And it completely freaked me out that I knew I had not opened my eyes. And I had literally seen through or past or without my eyes, but I had seen what my eyes would have seen had my eyes been open. And it freaked me out. And unfortunately, it freaked me out so much I stopped meditating, which was, in retrospect, kind of bizarre because the meditations were so beautiful, so beautiful. And I was getting so much from them, but it just freaked me out. So that was 1987. And that was after the course, after I took the Julianne Connell course. So a couple of years later, in 1989, I got very, very ill. And that's a whole nother story, but I do think that my illness had to do with a lot of things of this lifetime, of previous lifetimes, of what was going on in my parents and family with my conception and all that, and growing up, and the fact that when I was about 18, I had been very, very highly creative with piano. And I stopped. I just stopped cold turkey, and all of that creative energy and all of that place that my emotional energy had to go was just shut down and dammed up. And I think that, and then the 2 years earlier when I stopped the meditation, when the energy was starting to move through me, I think that these combinations of things are what brought about my illness when I was 28 years old. Interestingly enough, on my Saturn return. But when I got sick, I one day had all my life I'd had these ideas would come to me. Or if I was in a crisis, I would call out and I would literally hear a voice. It was not my voice. And it wasn't never a controlling voice. And I could always differentiate between me and whatever the voice was. It was definitely always a loving voice, a peaceful voice, a nourishing voice. And I could or could not, based on my desire and whim, do what the voice suggested. Never any control involved. But it was always loving, helpful, kind, and protective. I was literally times in my life where I was told I was in danger, and then I was told exactly what to do. And times when I knew I was in danger and I called out for help, and I was told exactly what to do. And I know that there are times where I was really made safe. So in any case, I was ill, and I suddenly had I got this message to pick up this book, which someone had given me 2 or 3 years before that I wasn't even interested in. But every time I tried to get rid of it, somehow I couldn't. And it was called Opening to Channel. And I had no interest in being a channel. Zero, zip, nada, nothing. I had been to channeling, some of which I really admired, but some I had heard of or seen videos of that I didn't. Yeah. But I've always been too concerned about what people think. And so the idea of channeling to me was just too weird, too out there. But I got this, I had been meditating since I'd gotten sick, and I hadn't really felt that same energy again that I had felt when I was young, a couple of years earlier. Um, but it was relaxing and calming. And then I got this message to pick up this book, and I'd had a unique set of experiences and images and teachings and inspirations during the particular meditation that at the end of it, I got the message to pick up this book. And I thought, really? Really? But I went and found it and I picked it up, and I'd been told to read, I don't know, like the first chapter, the first two chapters. And I read it. I did what I was told. And lo and behold, it was exactly what I had just experienced in my meditation. I thought, wow, that's odd. Then the next day I meditated again, and then I had another unique set of experiences, really interesting. And at the end of it, I was told, okay, now go read, I don't know, chapter 3 or chapter 3 and 4. And I did, and there again is all these experiences I had just had. And it was after maybe the third day of this that I thought, oh my God, am I being asked to open to channel? And but I didn't shut down this time. I was kind of freaked out, but I had a partner this time, and that I think made all the difference. And he was very supportive and open. And I talked to him about it, and it might have been Merle who said, because I was concerned about being taken over. I was concerned about lots of things. I was concerned about, I was concerned about my ego getting in the way, or my judgments, or my stuff. And I was concerned about my body. I'd heard stories of times where people are channeling, and then like the entity or whatever it is will go out and, have too much to drink, and then the channel's left with a hangover. It's not for me. And so he said, well, I think it was Merle who said, well, you can set your own rules, talk to him. And I did. And I thought this will be the end of it. So this will nix it completely. Like you don't dictate to an energy that's, higher than you are or whatever. That'll be it. This will be it. Like I thought I was getting myself off the hook. And so I said, number one, if I was going to channel, if that's what was happening, and I still wasn't sure, then this had to be the highest energy that it was possible for me to channel. Had to channel through my heart. I'd seen videos of and heard audios of people who channeled, and it were very heady, and I didn't like it. I thought, it has to come through my heart if you're going to come. You have to totally honor that this is my body and take care of it as I need it taken care of. And you have to be willing and able to get me completely out of the way so that none of my opinions or judgments or stuff can influence what's coming through. And I thought, like I said, that'll be the end of it. But I did all that. I was in my meditation, and I could feel it, and I could feel the openness, and I said all that, and it was like, yeah, okay, that's fine, no problem. It's kind of like, oh crap. And then I don't know exactly when after that, but I was meditating, and they started sort of coming in, or I could feel the energy intensifying. And then one day I was meditating, and all of a sudden there was this just like intense energy in the room. And it was bizarre because it wasn't around me. It was this other energy, huge energy, intense, powerful, and it was standing. I didn't see it, but could feel it. And it was standing about 4 feet, 5 feet from me. And it literally was it was like a vortex. and it went, our ceilings were about 7 feet high, and it went through the ceiling and maybe through the floor. I don't know. It was this huge vortex, and it felt like a being who was like a person, but not, not like me, not like you and me. And Merle, my partner, he often meditated with me when I did practice this. And so he was off to my left against the couch meditating. And we had 2 cats at the time. And at the moment that I felt this being come in, I heard Merle go, and I heard our cats, and my eyes were closed at the time, our cats scrambling. And I kind of opened my eyes, afraid I would kind of ruin it, but I didn't. It was very intense. It was, you could feel it. And Merle's eyes were open and looking at me, and I said, "Do you feel that?" And he said, "What?" And he pointed right where I felt it. He said, "It's standing right there, and it is huge." And I said, "Yes." And then we looked at our cats, and our cats were freaking out. Our cats had gotten down off the couch and the chairs, and they were gone behind. And then they were sticking their heads out, and they were looking exactly at this same spot, wide-eyed. And then they would look at me like, "What are you doing?" And then they'd look back at it, and then they'd duck back behind the couch. And then they'd go around, and they'd come out again, and they'd look at me like, "Holy crap." And then they duck back around again. And I said to Merle, I don't know what this is, but I think we're just supposed to sit here with it. So we did, and it stayed about 20 minutes. And it did feel like a person, like a master, it was very, very big, very impersonal in a way. Like whatever it came for, it really mattered. It really mattered that it was there with a purpose, and it had to do with me, and it was very important. And so I was very cared about, but it wasn't this sense of like warm loving that I got when I was meditating around me. It was a very impersonal kind of, but it was definitely a profound care and concern and a responsibility, I guess. And after about 20 minutes, it just kind of left, and we felt it go, and the cats came out, and we're like, "Oh, thank God." And Merle was like, "What was that?" And I said, "I have no idea." And it was, and he said, "Why don't you ask?" And I said, "Well, it's kind of done for today." And at this point, I was kind of done with the book. I didn't really have to do the book very long before I got it. This is what's happening, and I just need to sort of surrender to it and participate and learn. And so I wasn't doing the book anymore. So I have no idea if the book refers to that, because I only went maybe 4 chapters into it. So the next day, because I had reached the point where I could kind of talk to them, and I could kind of get an answer, and or at least I could feel an answer. And so I don't know that it was the next day, because I know that it took them a while before they could speak through me. I remember, and I don't know where this came in, but I know it was after this big guy, we called him the big guy, visited. But I think it was, a week or 2 after, when I literally, during a meditation, I swear this is how it felt, I felt like I felt it physically, like there was somebody, like a worm in my brain, like boring through my brain. It wasn't painful, it didn't hurt, didn't itch, didn't anything. I could just feel it. It was deep in my brain. But it literally felt like there was this worm boring through my brain. And it was a physical sensation. And it was odd, to say the least. I wasn't frightened by it, because it happened during the meditation. But what I did was I asked I asked them about it because I was really feeling them come in every day. And I didn't feel them in. I felt them like around me and like permeating a little bit. Um, and I asked what's happening. And the answer was immediate and clear. They said, um, we are building a neural pathway to your voice so that we can speak through you. And that was interesting. Never occurred to me that that would be something required, needed. How does that work? I don't know. But that was, yeah, they were very clear, like, we're building a neural pathway through your brain and to your voice so that we can speak through you. Okay. And they said it will take a while longer. And I think it took maybe a few more days or another week or so. I'm not really sure. And then one day, Merle was meditating with me, and he always had his eyes closed too. But he was very connected to me and to them. And so I remember them. They'd been coming in more and more, and Merle had been feeling that too. And I'd explained to him about the voice thing. And then one day, I was meditating, and they came in, and they had taught me. The way they taught me was simply to let go. It's like I do this backflip. That's how it feels to me. That I simply relax. I let go. I trust. And I kind of, what it feels like to me is I let go of all my thoughts, all my thinking, all my opinions, I just let it go. I just let go. And I do this kind of backflip into my own mind. And I go down, 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 down. And I just let go as I go. And I feel them. I feel them. And I kind of end up in this really beautiful, beautiful place of, like, I call it like a place of, sunlit, warm honey. It's kind of like what you would think of as like Eden or heaven. I feel like I'm on the bank in this beautiful like place with these beautiful like honey sunlight banks and this river of warm honeyed sunlight, and I'm in it, and I'm part of it. I'm not separate from it. I'm in it. And it's just so nourishing and so peaceful, and so there's so much love, and our friends are in, and so I'm kind of aware of what they're talking about, but it's as though I'm in this quote other place, and it's as though there's like this transparent wall between me and those things. So I have my own. I see things that they see when they go looking for information or something. I see it. I'm aware of what they're saying. I learn things, but oftentimes I'm learning something that's somewhat different from what they're talking to someone about. Anyway, this first time, suddenly they opened my eyes and turned toward Merle, and Merle felt it. He happened to open his eyes and turn toward them, and they said hello. And so then he asked them various questions, and he had a whole bunch ready. And one of them was, who was that big guy who arrived? And they said that was like a master teacher who's like responsible for who takes on by choice sort of the responsibility for overseeing, in a sense. It's hard to put things into words because the words don't begin to express it. But who's sort of responsible. We might call the person an ascended master or a Christ being, or, you could put any number of words to the being. You could call them Jesus or Buddha or I don't know any of the other names, but it wasn't those people, um, but it was a being like that who's part of that group of being awakened ones, I guess you'd call it. And they said that I mean, this seemed like an ancient being, because they said, Merle said, does the person have a name? And they said, yes, but you would not be able to pronounce it, and it's like this long. And I had this sense of this name, that really long name that I can only guess might have been in like Sanskrit or something like that. But truly, I couldn't even begin to pronounce it. And they just said, that being came to make sure that I was ready for our friends to fully come in and be with me. And so the permission had been given. And so that's why they were there. That was a long preface to say that as I now am sort of struggling to discern the way to speak and talk and write about this 30-year experience with our friends, with this inner teacher, I'm aware that there's something about the Course in Miracles in this. Now, our friends have been with me since I was a child. I used to go to the forest and call my friends, and they would come. But I think when the Course talks about, you end up with a teacher, an inner teacher, and I named my website innerteacher.net without making the connection at all, that then I came back to the Course and I was like, oh my God, they talk about inner teacher when when you've gone through the lessons, and that's what our friends are to me, and that's what I called the site. Which, wow, okay. But where was I? I think that the inner teacher that the Course refers to is an inner teacher who is with all of us, always. And what the Course does is awaken us to that. And I was awake to that as a child, and to some degree awake to that my whole life. As I said, I would call in emergencies or in difficult situations, and I would always get an answer. I would always feel a presence, a loving, peaceful presence. And also, if I was with someone else who was in crisis, I would call, and that whether that was an animal or a person, I would call and I would have that presence. And I think in a sense I channeled, because I would feel that love and it would be able to come through me, and I would have just the right words for that person. And so often people would say, oh, you're just an angel to me. One young woman said to me, this was before I ever started with our friends, but she said to me, I was at an event at Unity, and she came and she was pregnant, and I had run into her 2 or 3 other times when her life was in crisis, and just been there, and serendipitously, no planning. And that night she said to me, I came tonight because I knew you would be here. And she was pregnant. She said, and I need you to bless my baby, which was really a big thing for me, because I felt like, me bless your baby? I mean, I was like 25 or 26 years old. I was like, me? She said, I have to have, this baby has to have your blessing. And so I put my hands on her belly and I gave her a blessing. And she said to me, and she was in tears, and she said, I know that something like, I'm paraphrasing here, but she said something like, I know that you think you're human. I was like, yeah, kind of do. But she said, but I really believe that you're an angel, and that you only exist when I call you, because every time I call you, you appear. And I really believe that you are an angel, and you only exist when I call you. And I said, well, maybe we're angels to each other in this life, and maybe I am one of your angels, but I also happen to be a human being who has an everyday life. And maybe it just so happens that I'm physically here right now. And she said, well, maybe, but I don't believe that. So it was kind of sweet. It was very sweet, actually. In any case, again, where was I? um, uh, as I begin to think about how to write about this in an authentic way, I realized I have to go back to the Course in Miracles, because in our culture, there's no words or concepts or structure for this kind of a gift that I have. And I see how the New Age world has handled it. And most people, not all, but the ones you know about, are generally the ones who go the accepted cultural route, which is how can I make the most money off of this? And I never wanted to do that. And I didn't want to do it in one way for a selfish reason, because I knew that my ego would destroy me if I did that. That I would not be able to, I would not be able to stay humble with it, and that's essential. And it is challenging because this is a unique gift. We tend to put, creative people on pedestals, painters, writers, actors, and certainly the people who channel, you look at them and they get put on very high pedestals. But we're all human. And to me, pedestals are very fearsome things, because the same people who put you on them, they can knock you off them. And they will when you displease them. When they don't get what they want, or they think they didn't get what they want. And I didn't feel comfortable with the sort of hero worship that sometimes came with the channeling. I channeled for friends. I channeled for small groups. I've done privates for people. I still do that. Out of it, and people do pay me and give me money, but that's not the main thing. And I've ended up working with a lot of people with medical issues, which was something I said I would never do. Never, did not want medical stuff. And I've always had a rule with our friends that they always have to say to people, if you're worried, you need to go to the doctor, because even your worry is costing you your health. But also because I didn't want to be responsible for someone not going and getting a diagnosis that they needed. But I've learned that our friends are very accurate in what they see medically, and though they still say that to people, I've also learned that they will tell people very specifically if they see something. And sometimes they'll say, we don't see anything, but you're worried, and so you need to go and get it checked out. And other times they'll say to someone, go to your doctor and ask for this kind of test that shows this. And over the years, sometimes they've learned the names of some of the tests and things. And I've learned that if they say to someone, here's what we see, you need to go to your doctor and you need to ask for this kind of test, that people need to do that. And I've asked, finally, once I learned from a dear, dear friend who didn't do that and ended up much, much sicker than he needed to be before he was diagnosed, to have our friends nudge me, so that when I return after the session, I get this nudge of, oh yeah, they talked about this and they said go for this test. So that then I reinforce that and say to the person, I'm remembering that they told you this, and I just want to reinforce that you really need to do that. Because if they've told you to get this test, there's something it's going to show you, and you really need that information. Gosh, there's so much more I could say, but as I go through the the lessons, I keep finding these descriptions that are so like our friends, where in this isn't the first time they've said this, but this is lesson 44. And what did they talk about? That you, here we go, I even wrote next to it, sink into your mind, letting go of every kind of interference and intrusion by quietly sinking past them. Your mind cannot be stopped in this unless you choose to stop it. It is merely taking its natural course. What is needful is a sense of the importance of what you are doing, something very holy. And they talk about in that you should experience a sense of relaxation, even a feeling that you are approaching, if not actually entering into the light, formless and without limit. They talk in another lesson earlier, they talk about literally, dropping down through your mind, and is amazing because it so closely describes how our friends taught me to access them. So here we go. Sit quietly with your eyes closed. Make no effort to think of anything. Try instead to get a sense of turning inward, past all the idle thoughts of the world. Try to enter very deeply into your own mind, keeping it clear of any thoughts that might divert your attention. Try to sink down and inward, away from the world and all foolish thoughts of the world. It's amazing, and then they go on to say it is quite possible to reach God. In fact, it is very easy because it is the most natural thing in the world. It is the only natural thing in the world. And I'm struck. It's different than how I accessed them when I was a child, how they taught me when I was 28 years old, 26 and 28, and how I access. Although now, they're kind of with me. I can access them at any time, and that continues to grow and deepen. And I guess part of what I want to say and to integrate in however I'm going to share this relationship is that the gift of our friends and of channeling and of communing with them and all the ways that has expanded and developed and deepened and continues to in my life and for me doesn't negate the need for tools and mentors. And the Course in Miracles is a huge mentorship and training. My little self, my ego self, still needs training, still needs mentoring. It needs tools. I need tools to work with that part of myself to have it step back and have the bigger self and our friends be more and more a part of who I am and my life. And A Course in Miracles is huge. A Course in Miracles says it's a mind training, and that's what it is. And for me, it's been hard to accept that mind training. And I'm finally doing that more and more fully. But for me also, I really believe in, and my process is one of layer by layer by layer of marinating something into me and also letting off like water from a dam what's no longer needed. because I really want to go deep and I want to cleanse to my roots. And that's what's most important to me. So Course in Miracles is a huge part of that, and has been and continues to be. And so I want to integrate that into this story. And then there's other things that have been more recently helpful to me, like Jean Houston and all of her, because her research over the course of her life brings in a lot of knowledge, ideas, modalities that do not exist in our culture in the West, in America in the West. And she's able to give us words and ideas and concepts that are very rich and great and wonderful tools that also help open up to these levels of reality, that are very real and with us every moment of every day, but that we are trained out of in this culture from the time we're very young. And the biggest way we're trained out of it is not just being told that our imaginary friend is not real, but it's being denied the language and the concepts, the ideas with which to embrace the reality that we feel, sense, and know as children to be true, to be real. It's having the adults around us no longer have that language, and to see them, as I remember doing as children, and not understanding how they could be so shut down, how they could not see. And even to this day, a lot of times I'll be among people, and what's most challenging to me is how much people don't see that can be right in front of them, and they don't see it. And the reason they don't see it is because they've been taught to put up these walls, and they've been denied by our culture the language, the concepts, the ideas, and the reality. They've been told that these things aren't real. And a lot of what Jean Houston does is give us the language and the tools and the concepts and the affirmation that in other cultures around the world, they still know these things, that these things are real, that we are the exception, that we have constricted ourselves so greatly that we no longer are open to this. And in that sense, it's no wonder that we can harm the earth and we can harm each other in the way that we do, because we're so constricted and contracted that we don't even see life. We don't even know life anymore for all that it is around us. And so, I want to integrate all of this in the story and more. But that is enough for today. So I was going to ask our friends to come in and talk about the lesson for today, which is God is the light in which I see. And maybe I'll do another video of that, but I think for now I'm going to close on this one. To whomever might see this now or someday. Oh.